St. Lucie County 5th graders. It's Mrs. LaShawn Ashton here, and I am excited to be with you here today because I am going to change things up a little bit. So instead of just focusing on one standard, I'm going to kind of show you the skills and strategies that you need to know to be able to understand a whole text. So we're going to kind of be using a bunch of different standards and reading strategies to make sure we understand what we're reading. Because I know not everybody has access to Canvas. So if you're reading something at home, you can use these same strategies and start asking the same types of questions. So before we begin, I just want to review, when you are reading something for the first time, you are really reading to get the gist of it. So the who, what, where, when, why, how, what's happening kind of ideas. So that is what we are looking at. So who, what, so who or what, where, when, what is happening, why, and how. So in Canvas, the text that they're using is, what's the big idea about marine biology, life in the ocean? So it looks like this. So we're going to break this apart. I'm going to read it to you. So everybody listen and put your listening ears on. Even if you don't have the text in the screen, you can still follow along. Are you ready? Okay. What's the big idea about marine biology, life in the ocean? So before we start reading, is this an informational text or a literature text? Good, it's informational. All right, here we go. It all started in the ocean. Our planet is made up of 5 great oceans: the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian, the Arctic, and the Southern. They are linked together, creating a huge body of salt water called the world ocean that surrounds the continents and islands and covers about 2/3 of the Earth's surface. Scientists know from studying tiny fossils that life on Earth probably started in the oceans nearly 4 billion years ago. For most of Earth's history, life stayed and thrived in the oceans. About 500 million years ago, some living things, like our ancestors, moved out of the water and onto land. But most life stayed in the oceans. Underwater wonders. Life in the oceans is much more diverse than life on land. Oceans have many more different kinds of organisms. They are full of the biggest, smallest, fastest, weirdest, coolest, and spookiest stuff. Whales, phytoplankton, jellyfish, sponges, sea dragons, marlins, giant squid, hatchetfish, seaweed, starfish, sea cucumbers, manatees, and stingrays, to name a few. Just how do you live in water? Sea organisms need special adaptations for life in water because there's a lot less dissolved oxygen in water. Food gets scarce once you leave the continental shelves. As you go deeper, pressure increases. Water is denser and more viscous than air. It supports weight better, but it's more difficult to move through because it's stiffer. As light travels downward in water, different colors, wavelengths, are absorbed at different depths. Below 2,000 feet, the ocean is completely dark. So I've read to you the 3 sections. It all started in the ocean, underwater wonders, and just how do you live in water. So most of the time when we're reading, we just read the text, but sometimes there can be pictures, illustrations, charts, things like that are important to read too. So this one has 3 different ones. So I'm going to read those to you next. So this one says, the first life on Earth was probably bacteria. Some organisms like dolphins moved to land, but later returned to the ocean. Could you imagine that, a dolphin living on land and then returning to the ocean? So you can see that up close. So this is the one about bacteria. Oops, sorry guys, bacteria. And this is the one about other animals or other living on going to land and then coming back to water like dolphins. The next one. Microscopic zooplankton drift on currents and provide food to many ocean residents. Did you know that blue whales weigh more than the heaviest known dinosaur? That's pretty crazy, huh? And blue whales are in the oceans all the time. So that's pretty cool. So there's that. And that's about the zooplankton providing food. And this is about the whale being bigger than the largest dinosaur. And one more. Seals' slippery, streamlined, hydrodynamic bodies and flippers make them good swimmers. And then wave your hand underwater and someone will feel it. Lateral lines on fish help them detect movement at a distance. I didn't know that. So let's start here. So I wrote the question down. Why might I need adaptations? So it says in this one, where is it? Right here. I'll read it to you guys again. It says, wave your hand underwater and someone will feel it. Lateral lines on fish help them detect movement at a distance. And if you see, he has a lateral line right here. So those help fish detect motion. So why is it important for fish to detect motion? Good, those are some good answers. So they know that there's something around. It could be a person fishing. It could be another fish. It could be a predator that's trying to eat them. It could be a food source for them. So they need to be able to know movement so they can protect themselves or feed themselves or other things. Good job, guys. Okay, so let's look at this section right here. And it all started in the ocean. So I read it to you. Do you remember what I read? You may have forgotten the specific details by now. But what do we think this section is going to be about? It all started in the ocean. Right, maybe about life on Earth, how it all started in the ocean, how we all came to be from the ocean. So it basically talks about scientists studying tiny fossils, that life on Earth probably started in the ocean nearly 4 billion years ago. For most of Earth's history, life stayed and thrived in the oceans. About 500 million years ago, some living things like our ancestors moved out of the water and onto land, but most life stayed in the oceans. Isn't that weird to think that animals that you think were always in the ocean may have lived on land for a brief period of time before they returned? So how did they adapt to that? What are some of those adaptations? Because fish need water to survive. They need to be able to breathe underwater. They can't breathe outside of water. So just things like that, it's curious. So when you're reading something and something stands out to you like that, it makes you wonder, like, how did that happen? Why did it happen? All those interesting questions to make you question more and even maybe go forward and research more about it. Underwater wonders. It lists all the things you might see underwater, from the weirdest things to the coolest things to the spookiest things. And it lists a lot of animals and things like seaweed and starfish and sea cucumbers and stingrays. So it's telling us in this section all the wonders we might find underwater. So we know this section is all about underwater wonders, like all the wonderful things you can find underwater, things that you might know are there and things that you might never know are there. And the last one, which we already talked about a little bit, it says, just how do you live underwater? So what do you think that section was about again? Sorry. What do you think that section was about again? Good. How they live underwater. How do all of these creatures live underwater? And what are the adaptations that they have to live underwater? Have their food. The deeper they go, the pressure increases. So you'll see sometimes when you go fishing or different fish live on top. Some might live in the middle, and those deep underwater creatures live on the bottom because they can handle the pressure. So it's just an array of different things. And we also need to make sure we know words, all the words to understand the text. So if we come across a word we don't know, so I highlighted or boxed the word diverse right here. It says life in the ocean is much more diverse than life on land. Oceans have many more different kinds of organisms. So diverse. If life is more diverse underwater because they have many more different kinds of organisms, what do you think the word diverse means? Right, there's lots of different things. There's a lot of different creatures, fish, living things under the water than you'll find on Earth. So it's very diverse. There's all different kinds of things compared to Earth. No, not Earth, land. So what that means is there's all kinds of different things that you can find underwater compared that you'll find on land. There's not nearly as many types of creatures on land as there are underwater. So that's the gist of this. If you don't have this, it's okay if you're not on Canvas. But I want you, when you're reading an article or a book or an excerpt, to think about those who, what, where, when, why. What is each section about? When you read the title, what do you think the article's about? When you read the heading, what do you think that's about? Making sure you go back and look at the illustrations and the charts and reading those captions underneath, because that's really vital information sometimes that you might not get from the text itself. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys on Wednesday.